Hello, this is Gimme Empathy. It's a podcast. I'm its host, Scott Mercer. You're the listener, and my guest today is Branko Cosic. Who's Branko Cosic? You probably know who Branko Cosic is. Maybe you know him from his community radio show Unnecessary Knowledge that he does with previous guest Cam Smith. Maybe you know him from his day job as an audio engineer at 4BC. Maybe you've recorded with him with his company 1000 Hertz Recordings. Maybe you know him as the drummer in the bands Tape Off, Gold Stars, or Total Pace. Maybe you just know him from around town. He's got his fingers in everything, does Branko, and he's about to tell you all about it in this episode. We talk a lot about the band Tape Off. I'm a big fan of this band, and it might help for context if you went and listened to at least their two albums, Chipper and Broadcast Park, before you listen to this episode. They're very good. I like them lots. And we talk about some of the major players in the Tape Off story, including the aforementioned Cam Smith, who also plays with Branko in the band, Ben Green, who plays guitar, and Nathan Pickles, who is the lead singer. Branko has a really good memory. He has a consistently good head for dates. He remembers when things happen down to the month and sometimes even the day, which I was really impressed with, despite the fact that when we recorded this episode, we were both a little bit hungover. So apologies for any croakiness in advance. At the start of this episode, I was setting recording levels, which is why, as you'll hear in just a moment, I asked Branko to laugh so he could, so I could see how loud he was going to get and I could set my equipment. So I think that's all the information you need to listen to this episode. Hope you enjoy. This is episode number 43 with Branko Cosic. It's not like an inquisition.
A police interview.
Yeah. This is good. Oh, do a big laugh again. Okay, good.
Yep. Peaky. Is it? I have a loud, boomy voice.
Yeah.
Hopefully my nose won't get in the way as well. So, because, I got a little bit drunk last night.
Oh, same. Yeah. So we're both a bit toasted this morning.
Yeah. I got a lift in this morning. I should not drive.
Yeah. So what did you do last night?
DZ Death Rays.
Oh, right. Yeah.
At the Tivoli, and kicked on at Blutz afterwards. Had some kids. They were like, "Oh my God, are you the guy from Total Pace? Oh, I've been noticed."
Oh, cool. That's cute.
Yeah, but then I actually went up to this one kid who was wearing a Total Pace shirt. I was like, "Oh, hey, cool shirt, man." He's like, "Yeah, thanks." I was like, he doesn't know who I am. I'm the least popular member in the band.
Oh. Is Blutz like? Is that the new like late night place?
Yeah, I like it.
I saw a rat out the back there once.
Really?
Yeah, in the beer garden, just like perched on the step.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's cool. I like it. It's kind of my place to be now.
Right.
I prefer. I mean, yeah, I definitely not going to go to Rick's. I did go to Rick's during Big Sound, but yeah, you can't just hang out at. Oh well, you can. You can like hang out at Black Bear if you want to, but I don't know. I'm a sports guy, so Bluetooth TV screens with sports on it.
Ah, okay, yeah,
works in my favor.
Harley and I, after the zoo last night, Harley and I stopped in at Lucky Egg because I'd seen earlier Zoe from Whale House was working there, so we stopped in to say hi. And because Harley said he wanted a cheeseburger, but then he didn't get a burger.
I've heard stories of those guys taking orders and then people just never picking up their orders.
Oh, man.
Like, it's rampant. They are so drunk that they can't remember they actually ordered anything and they'll just walk out or see a friend or something and walk out.
So, Branko, we weren't recording before, but you have a personal history with one of the decorations here in my lounge room.
Yeah. So I just saw this drum skin that was given away on Unnecessary Knowledge.
Your radio show?
Yep. on 4ZZZ. So I'm pretty sure it was Radiothon 2012, going by the date where it says date off.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Radiothon time, we are encouraged to try and give away a show prize. And that year I did not have many good ideas on what to give away. I thought, well, I know a lot of cool people. Why don't I get them to sign the drum skin and give that away? So I can see, so there's Tim and Kelly from Scream Feeder. There's DZ Death Race. There's Simon and Shane. All the Hungry Kids of Hungary when they existed. Charlie Mayfair when they existed. The Belligerents? No. Oh, the Greats.
The Greats, yeah.
Oh, right.
And that's, I like, they've actually done the Greats logo in whiteout.
That's
it
right.
Looks really stylish.
I think Rachel, my old co-host of Unnecessary Knowledge, she helped out with getting this skin signed. She must have gotten the Greats to sign it. I do not remember getting them to sign that.
You got Ed Guglielmino.
Yeah.
And Ballpark Music.
Oh, I don't even. Oh, maybe because we gave it to Ben Priest and while he was managing them at the time, got him to sign it. That's probably what happened. And Tara Simmons, would have been there as well. What's the signature right in the middle there with the black pen?
One of them just says it's like versus Heart 4ZZZ. I don't know. That's the one I don't know who it is actually.
Ooh, that one I would have to figure out. And the Stress of Leisure.
Oh, yeah, Stress of Leisure, yes.
That's funny because I don't know if I really knew Ian that well at the time.
Yeah. And Georgia Potter on the far side, who now goes as Morton.
Ah, wow. Yeah, totally. At the time, she was in...
MKO's band? Was that?
No. She probably was, but I saw her as part of Lanius and the Family.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, I remember seeing them at Big Day Out.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a long time ago now.
So, Branko, you know everyone. How do you know me?
How do I know you? How do I know you? When was the first time we met? Was it at 4ZZZ or was it a tape-off show?
I don't know, to be honest.
I cannot quite remember when we crossed paths. I mean, I knew you were in Go Go Fish, I think at the time when we finally met.
But suffice to say, like the local community radio music scene, I was looking through my notes because I keep weird notes like this. The first time I saw Tape Off, and this was funny because there was some article thing because Tape Off just signed a bunch of deals, signed to PS, I think for
so
bookings.
PS Music Group are going to be our booking agents and Alien Lane is going to be our manager.
And it's funny when sometimes bands and artists are around for a long time, but they only kind of make an effort to pick up steam after they've been going a long time. And things get kind of rebranded because you don't want to appear too old. And I saw in this article, it's like Tape Off, who burst onto the scene in 2014 with it. Like, what? No. I first saw you guys in 2011.
Yeah.
I think the first time was at Woodland at Scream Feeder's quote unquote final gig.
Yeah. That was a fun show.
Yeah. With Violent Soho as
yes.
well. Yeah.
Yes. They had maybe just written some of the songs that were going to be on Hungry Ghost.
Right.
That particular week of that show was one of the best weeks ever in Tape Off history. So I'll elaborate. 2011 was pretty busy for Tape Off. We had And Sometimes Gladness come out. I think it was around September.
Is that the first or second EP?
Second EP.
Second EP.
And back in actually June of 2011, Kelly Lloyd had asked Tape Off to be her backing band for her then upcoming solo record, which turned out to be Magnetic North. We were so stoked because we were big Scream Feeder fans. We didn't play as many shows as we could have as the full Tape Off backing Kelly Lloyd thing. I think after she'd asked us, she'd realised how much it was going to cost her to travel 4 other bodies around the country to play her songs. So actually, just her and I kind of formed a 2-piece version of it and played a ton of shows, which was great. But that particular week in December of 2011, the Scream Theatre show was on the 1st of December, I think. And then we played 2 shows with Harmony, who just flying up, and they were touring off the back of their first album. One was at X and Y Bar with like Mikisco. Oh no, sorry. The second show was with Mikisco. I'm pretty sure the first show was with Big Strong Brute. So it was like Big Strong Brute, quiet, Tape Off, loud, Harmony, kinda quiet. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And then we played the Waiting Room the next day, and then a few days after that, I think it was like the 6th, we supported Future of the Left.
Wow.
At the Zoo. I remember my mind being blown because, like, well, I've just played with John Chappell, who was in McCluskey, and now part of Harmony, and I'm about to play with Falco and Jack, who are part of McCluskey. So I could say within the span of a week, I've been in the same room as the members of McCluskey within a week. So that was cool. And we played with Future Left, and then 2 days after that, Tape Off played at Woodland again, but as Kelly's backing band, supporting Kurt Vile and the Violators.
That was
huge. It was a sweet, sweet week. Kurt was a really sweet guy, and the band at the time was super, super cool dudes. I think some of them were in War on Drugs at the time, and Blank Realm played as well that show. It was a pretty good week.
So, Branko, how in your life did you even get to, let alone where you are now, how did you get to that point in 2011 where you were rubbing shoulders with like all these heroes? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Callum Vale, deep south of Brisbane. So, yeah, I mean, when I was born, parents were living in Woodridge at the time. So spent my first 6 years in Woodridge. And then when I was about 6 or 7, we moved to Callum Vale and went to primary school in Sunnybank Hills, went to high school at McGregor High.
And when did you discover, like, you seem like one of these assholes who discovered cool music, like you're probably listening to shellac when you were 9 or some shit like that.
I didn't actually listen to shellac until 2012, I think.
Okay. When did you get into cool music, though?
The earliest music memory I have is when we were still in Woodridge. There's a place called Woody's Music. Mum was buying a 12-inch single copy of the Models' Out of Mind, Out of Sight. I can't remember which way it went, but maybe I saw the video clip for it on TV, where it's like all them in leopard prints, going off. I just went wild for that clip. I think I begged my mum to get that song on record so I could listen to it at home. That's the earliest memory that I've got of loving music. I had pretty cool older cousins as well that had lots of cool stuff. I remember one of my older cousins, he was deep into his Cure phase and he had teased hair just like Robert Smith. He used to scare the shit out of me, running around chasing me with his hair, but such a nice guy. I got into hip-hop in 91, so I was about 9, and I had a copy of Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet on tape and Ice-T's OG Original Gangster. Yeah, I remember I always loved U2, and I don't know, the charts weren't so bad in the late 80s. Doesn't seem that way now, but Johnny Diesel in the Injectors were in the charts. And
do you remember when Nirvana hit?
I do. So we were definitely in Callum Vale, although that was a pretty mega week, that week when Nevermind came out. Blood Sugar Sex Magic was out and Use Your Illusion was out, and I was definitely on the Red Hot Chili Peppers train first before jumping on the Nirvana train. So, yeah, I remember seeing Smells Like Teen Spirit on Rage and going, wow, this is heavy. This is pretty cool. But I don't think it was life-changing for me as it may have been for some other people. I don't know. I'd gotten a copy of Blood Sugar Sex Magic on tape at the time. I thought, wow, this is pretty sweet. So a record that doesn't have any spaces, like the album just keeps going and going and going. There's no gaps in between tracks. So
When did you start playing music yourself?
I always wanted to play the drums. I could probably remember when I was like 5 or something like that. We had a family friend that had a drum kit in his garage. Always wanted to have a hit, but it was off limits. So maybe because of that fueled my want to play the drums. I finally got a drum kit when I was 15. That was after a lot of nagging. I bought the drum kit just off Hale Street from the guy that played in Lavish. Remember them?
No.
Lavish. Check that band out. They were a Brisbane band. They were a bit flash in the pan. They had a couple of singles, but I don't know, never really went that far. I mean, their songs got in TV shows and stuff. But anyway, I got a drum kit from him, and which I thought was pretty cool. It was like, oh my God, first starstruck moment, whatever that is.
You had a drum kit that wasn't just like it had been played by like a real rock star.
Yeah, I'd say it was one of his practice kits kind of thing. So, so anyway, my first kit, and I had that in my bedroom for ages, and Mum would just be in the kitchen, doing whatever she's doing, and she would have to put up with my noise, which God bless her, she did. And then I remember I moved it to the garage for a while, and my garage was not soundproofed or anything like that. I remember we had these neighbours that lived across the road. The wife, she was not a happy customer when I moved my drum kit to the garage, and she made it her life journey to make sure that people were going to know that it was our house that had that horrible noise, coming out of, kind of thing. Yeah, I remember one time my mum was telling me a story how she bumped into her at the shops, and the lady across the road was like, oh, you can get practice pads. It was close to Christmas time or something like that. It's like, you can just get them practice pads and that's it, so you don't have to annoy the rest of the street. And my mum's like, well, you know what? Christmas is around the corner. You can go buy it for him.
So your mum was on board.
Yeah, mum totally zinged her. So that was awesome. And I learnt the guitar not long after that, actually. So this is all around 97, 98. And the first thing I learnt on guitar was Grin Spoon's Repeat. Dun, 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 because it was all drop D. And I was listening to a lot of Helmet at the time as well. So learnt a lot of Helmet, learnt a lot of Fu Manchu, just all drop D stuff. And I kind of slowly figured it out that it was like, oh, if you tune the top string up to E, there's all these other songs you can play. Now you can play Weezer and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where music playing started.
And were both your parents always like supportive of you making all this noise?
Supportive. I mean, they are supportive, but reluctant. I mean, my mum was always like, all right, for me and my siblings, I guess in her mind, she had the plan was like, you're the lawyer, you're the doctor. Brother, you can be the whatever it is, high paying jobs. But no, being a musician wasn't really high on their agenda for what they wanted us to do. No, I think they just got me a drum kit just to shut me up. And here I am, still banging the drums.
What was the career path like when you were, a teenager? What did you think you were going to do when you grew up?
Yeah, I stuffed myself up when it came to high school. I had no intention of going to university, but I still did elective subjects, which was a total waste of time because I failed them horribly, like Maths A and stuff like that. But I did want to become a sound engineer. I did think about it in grade 12, and I was totally going to enroll like a SAE course or something like that. But I then talked myself out of it because I didn't want to put any financial burden on my parents for doing that. So I don't know where I got that idea from and took myself out of it, but Yeah, I kind of wished I had stuck with that plan, actually had followed through with it. I think I'd be on a different career trajectory had I made that decision earlier. No, when I finished school, I just did odd jobs everywhere. And it was like I had a high school girlfriend at the time that was not very into music at all or anything like that. And she lived just a few blocks away from our place. So I actually put the drums down for a couple of years between towards the end of 2000 to sometime during 2002. I didn't play the drums at all. I'd actually packed them up in my parents' garage and didn't touch them for 2 years.
So you just like went to work and then came home and played house?
Well, what had happened was, so I did all these odd jobs like office admin jobs and stuff like that. I did not know what I wanted to do. I had no direction. And then I finally got a job at a print business, being like a little office junior / trainee graphic designer. So I started applying my trade, learning my trade in graphic design and print design. And at that work, it started out awesomely. And then probably about 9 months to 12 months down the track, the boss had hired his girlfriend to start working. I remember the job interview that I had with him. His girlfriend was at the job interview too, and there was just bad vibes about her. She was a very difficult person to kind of crack open. I could not figure her out. Anyway, that was just the interview, and then after that, I didn't really have to have much to do with her. But she started working at the place, and yeah, we were just like, two magnets that you try and put together that, two negatives don't make a positive kind of thing. Just did not get along. Could not figure it out. She just had a really bad vibe about her. It was nothing. She never had anything positive to say. So it was quite frustrating for me as a kid trying to figure out what am I trying to do in life or whatever, and having this person being very negative. Yeah, it was super frustrating. So that's what made me get the drum kit out of the cupboard or whatever at mum and dad's house. I was still living with them at the time, and start setting up and took my frustration out on a drum kit.
So what, you didn't get back into it like for musical purposes, just
Not
as
quite.
like a stress relief thing?
No, it was very therapeutic.
Yeah.
So, so that's how I started getting back in the drums. And I had a friend who lived up the top of the street as well. He was a drummer too, and he had his drum kit set up at his house. And I'd go up there and jam with him for a bit. And I was like, yeah, I should start setting up my drums, and maybe I'll buy some new stuff. Maybe I'll buy some new skins. Maybe I'll buy this. Maybe I'll buy that. And yeah, and then I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I should give this drum thing a kind of red hot go.
And when did the first band come along?
Well, I had a high school band, and we played Slayer, Machine Head covers, possibly a Strapping Young Lad cover in there as well, which was impossible to play, but, well, I just went for it. So that was between 98 to 2000. We were in the Battle of the Bands that the Queensland Academy of Music. Remember that place?
No.
It was in Spring Hill. It was a big music shop. They held this Battle of the Bands. Sunk Lotto were the winners of their first year, the year before my band did it. But yeah, we played in that. We played our brand of new metal because, Slipknot and all that was the flavor of the day at the time, and Limp Bizkit and Korn. And we made it to the semi-finals. Remember Dave Atkins from Resin Dogs and later Wolfmother fame was one of the judges. I thought that was pretty cool. I remember somewhere, I've probably still got it at mum and dad's house, him marking us. It's like lacks dynamics. So I had no idea what the word dynamic meant at the time. I thought that was funny. I kind of made it my life goal to figure out what dynamics means. And so that was that band, went to the semi-final, whatever. We played like the end of year assembly when I finished grade 12.
What song did you play for assembly?
We had original songs by then. all kind of new metal numbers. We had two singers before Linkin Park did two singers. I'd want to say that, but
Did one of them rap? One of them scream? Was it that?
Yeah, actually, yes. Come to think of it, that's right. Yeah, and the bass, drums, and guitars as well. So my cousin was in the band who, didn't go to the school, but we're like brothers. So we played the end of year assembly, and I remember saying to the teacher, we're going to play for 10 minutes, whatever. It's going to be like a 3-song medley or whatever. And the school teacher at the time was definitely not a fan of that kind of music at all. So after 5 minutes, they tried to draw the curtain, and then they were like, oh, they're not stopping. I'll draw it back. And then they're like, really need you to stop right now. So they actually, they pulled the power on the amps and the mics as well. So that they had killed that and had drawn the curtain. And I'm like, well, I don't need power for my drum kit, and we're still playing. So I just kept playing. And everybody there is going, wow, yeah, cool, going off, whatever. And my cousin and our singer, Ben, at the time, actually couldn't find where the curtain met. So they just ripped a hole in this big old velvet curtain and jumped out and started jumping around to incite the crowd or whatever.
That's so rock and roll.
I heard that we were the last band to ever play an end of year assembly. They stopped doing it after that. So my fault, I guess. So it was the first high school band. And my cousin and I were still interested in trying to make music. He had another friend, Joel, who he had a guitar. It was like, let's try and start a band. That was around about 2003-ish that we tried to start something. My uncle and auntie, as in my cousin's parents, my uncle and auntie, they live out in Jimboomba. They've got a massive acreage property there. We would go out there with the drum kit and the guitars and just try and make music and make all the noise we wanted. It was great. And then around about that time as well, it was kind of like, oh, there's this thing called MySpace where you can put music up and people can listen to it. You can try and get heard and that kind of stuff. I remember that being like a bit of a fuel for like, oh, we should try and do something. But we had no idea how you actually got gigs or who to talk to or anything like that. It was just suburban kids, totally isolated from that realm.
At that point, had you been into the Valley and seen any live gigs?
I had definitely been in the Valley. I mean, I went to heaps of shows at the Arena and the Zoo and stuff like that, but knew nobody in the scene. But I mean, I listened to a lot of local bands, like Giants of Science were just starting out around about that time. Secondin, and obviously Regurgitator, Scream Feeder, Powderfinger, all that kind of stuff as well growing up too. But yeah, just didn't know anybody sort of in the scene. So it was usually me, my cousin, or my girlfriend at the time, or whatever. Go to shows, whatever you'd hear on the Jays or something like that, or read about in Time Off. I was an avid Time Off and Rave magazine reader, so that's where I would get all my local knowledge from, and then go to shows from there. And that band that I was playing in from 2003, I think we made it to about 2006 before it all just dissipated into nothing.
What were you called?
Via Fuse.
Please tell me the Fuse was spelt with a Z.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know how we landed on that name, but we did. And there was, we were trying to figure out how to record ourselves. How do you put a product out, all that kind of stuff. It was so foreign to us. So I remember I made a CDR and I gave it to Chris Harms, who was the editor of Rave Magazine at the time. And I had started working with him at Queensland newspapers at the time. So that's how I met him. I actually took over his job when he left the newspapers as an edition controller. That was the title. Yeah, and he left that job to go become the editor of Rave Magazine. Yeah, I remember I popped into the offices that they had at West End at the time and said, hey, here's this EP. I don't know, like, who should I give this to or whatever? It's like, give it here. I'll give it a spin. I'll give it a mention. And I remember it was like in the top 5 What's on the Rave stereo of the week kind of thing. I was like, sweet. We got a mention. But I remember at the time I saw him, he was like, there's this new band around called Iron On. You should really check them out. They're huge. I was like, I will. I never checked out Iron On though. I missed Iron On, sadly.
But in terms of like a first contact, like Chris Harms would have been a very useful person to know back
Well,
then.
definitely. That was a conduit there. I definitely annoyed Chris Harms for knowledge for a while there.
And that first EP on CDR, did you record that?
Yes.
How did you put together the knowledge of how to record your own music?
So my cousin actually went to SAE and he did a part-time course while he was still doing his apprenticeship as a plumber. And he did the 2-year course. He kind of bought the mixer, the Pro Tools 001, as they called it. It was a way of getting audio into your computer. It was a massive sound card, if you want, an interface.
Oh, yeah.
So we figured out, okay, if you buy a mixer that has 8 direct outputs, we can plug all them into that 001 and we can have multi-track. Yeah, we can record a drum kit. Sweet. All right, let's do that. And we'd go and hire mics from the Brisbane Sound Group and go out to the farm and record a bunch of music and try and figure it out afterwards. I had no knowledge of how to use plugins or anything like that until much later. But yeah, it was 2002 when he got his Pro Tools rig and I was kind of figuring it out with him as well at the time. So I was just learning off him. I was just a massive sponge. Suffice to say, after he had graduated from SAE, he continued to be a plumber. He has never applied any of that sound knowledge that he had into any sort of work. He just went straight back to plumbing. He thought that was easier. Whereas I pretty much sucked all that knowledge out of him. It all sort of made sense to me. Like, it all came, you could say naturally. I don't know if naturally is the word, but I don't know. Everything just locked into place.
It was intuitive for you to pick it up.
Yeah. I was pretty interested in how panning certain instruments could really alter the sound of things. And computer recording was still in its infancy, but it was pretty mind-blowing that you could just go and record a drum kit at home now. You didn't have to go to a studio. But I'd never been in a studio at the time either, so I didn't know any better.
Did you eventually get gigs for Via Fuse?
No. Never left the the rehearsal room. Now, we always talked about it. I think there was a MySpace page, but 2006 is where it sort of fell apart, and I definitely had a hunger to start a band. My voice wasn't really being heard much in that band of the kind of music that we could make or I wanted to make. So I knew how to play guitars, I knew how to play drums, I knew how to record myself. I'm going to start a band. So the nucleus of what eventually became Tape Off started, sometime towards the end of 2006, really 2007. And at that time, I was living in Acacia Ridge. I was living solo. Like, I'd had a couple of housemates, one in particular, Paul. I used to work with him. He was a few years older than me, but we shared a lot of interests in music and in technology. And I learnt a lot of things about plugins and music technology through him. That's where I'd started putting the mental pieces together of how to start a band and give it a red hot go.
And when you were starting to think about giving it a red hot go, like where were your musical tastes by that point? What did you want to sound like at that point?
I was listening to a lot of Broken Social Scene at the time. I wanted to have 3 guitarists in the band and bass and drums. I had listened to a lot of Pavement. Something for Kate were an incredibly influential band. Like, I remember when Something for Kate used to have on their website their tabs, the tablatures that users had submitted. and learning a lot of the songs off of Elsewhere for 8 Minutes. It was like, wow, these tabs are so out of whack, as in the chord patterns that he was using, like Paul Dempsey was using, was just, yeah, I just always thought just rock music was just power chords, man.
Even Paul Dempsey's power chords are weird. Like he does that thing where he'll play like the root note will be like if he's starting a power chord on the fifth string, he'll play the one on the sixth string as well.
Yeah.
And it's got that classic, like the intro in Monsters. Like it's that,
Yep.
it's just that extra note that's like,
Yeah.
what is he, even though I don't know if he actually plays in different tunings, but he never sounds like he's playing in standard.
Exactly. And I love that. So I definitely took that school of thought into what I wanted the band to sound like. I wanted to sound like just whack chords. I wanted to sound like Something for Kate. It was kind of angular, but super melodic. Real goosebump kind of music. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was lots of Something for Kate. I was listening to lots of 9 Inch Nails at the time. Not that I ever wanted the band to sound like that, but I know I was definitely listening to lots of that at the time. What else came around there? Oh, lots of Slayer. There's always time for Slayer.
Were you influenced by local bands?
Giants of Science were definitely an influence. But I didn't know a lot of local bands. Was I Heart a Rushmore around about that time?
Yeah, they would have been around about 07.
07, yeah. I didn't actually get to see I Heart a Rushmore at Rick's or in the Valley at all. I didn't get to see them until March later. But yeah, not a lot of local bands. I didn't have that knowledge yet. I mean, I'd read in Time Off and Rave I had seen all these band names. I didn't know what they sounded like. And yeah, I guess at the time I wasn't actively scoping them out on MySpace. No, that's at the time I was listening to lots of Girling. That's another influence there as well. Yeah.
So how did this proto Tape Off first start?
So I started writing songs at home, and what I would do is, because I'd work night shift, so I'd have the whole morning to myself, I would sit on the couch and write songs. At the time, I remember I had Foxtel, and my whole morning would just comprise of trying to write songs and watching Simpsons for 3 hours a day. And whenever a song finally came to me, I would boot up my Pro Tools computer. It was an old Apple Mac G4. It was a Power Mac G4. Yeah, I would boot up the machine, boot up a Pro Tools session, and I'd have to try and come up with a name for it. And I'm like, what am I going to name this? I just need a name so it would be different from whatever I was writing. I didn't want to call it Song 1, Song 2, Song 3. So I actually named them after whatever episode of The Simpsons I was watching. Not particularly the episode name, but whatever was actually happening as I was writing it. So,
Like Mr. Burns blocks out the sun, like that.
Yeah, like Monorail. Or,
Yeah.
remember that episode where the Simpsons go out for a trip to that little beach community, and Ned Flanders has all the little post-it notes about where to put everything in the house. And there's the one scene where Bart and Milhouse run to the beach, and Bart says, last one in is a wet towel or something like that. And they go and dive in and just totally just belly flop straight in the sand, and cuts to like Homer in his car with the like in the water. He just goes, "It's low tide, boys." And it just speeds off. Pretty sure I named the song after that.
What was it called? Low Tide?
It's low tide, boys.
Oh, it's Low Tide, boys.
That's what I called it. Yeah, so that's how I named songs. And eventually it was starting to take shape. So I would go record all the guitar parts and then quickly jump on the drums, do some drums, play some bass, and that was a song. And for a lot of 2007 and a lot of 2008, that's what I was doing, writing a lot of songs like that and trying to figure out how I could do it with 3 guitars, but most of the time I just stuck to 2 guitars. And that was fine. And the idea was I was actually going to play guitars in the band. I wanted to play guitars. I wanted to find another drummer to play drums to it. But I started asking friends, had jams with some people, and I couldn't find a drummer that I was happy with. So I went, screw it. It's actually easier if I teach somebody the guitar parts and I'll play the drums how I want.
Right.
So that's how that started.
Were you originally going to sing as well?
Yes. That was the original plan. And I did sing for the start of, like, on the first Tape Off EP. I sing on History and Visitor, which we do sometimes still play. Sometimes. But I probably stopped singing a while ago because having a mic stand in my way is not fun.
Ah, okay.
So
And you would never do the headset mic?
I'd never do the whole Madonna headset thing. No, I
That'd be hilarious.
wouldn't go down that route.
Oh.
So, yeah, so 2008, it was myself and a friend, Yen. Yeah, Yen was a mutual friend of some other friends I was hanging out with at the time. I believe there was some sort of MySpace conversation where I said to her, like, in a message, "Oh, you wouldn't want to play bass in my band, would you?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Oh, wow." I was kind of joking, but are you serious? Can you play bass? She's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So she came around and we started doing some practices. And Joel, who was in my other band from from Vifuse, he had been around and started practicing as well. But I don't know. I didn't want to be in a band with him again because I knew how it worked out the last time. So I was like, nah, I'll try and keep looking for members. But Yen and I were starting the wheels turning. And then I bumped into Nathan, who I had met a bunch of years earlier because Nathan was a family friend of my high school girlfriend's. Yeah, so I met him at some family get-together thing. And I remember, so he was over at my ex-girlfriend's parents' house. And like the family just got in a CD burner and they were like totally into like swapping CDs and burning each other's CDs and stuff. And Nathan had come around and he had just gotten a copy of Super Heist's The Prize Recruit on CD. And Jono, who was my ex-girlfriend's brother, he was like, "Oh yeah, cool. Can I get a copy of that?" I remember that was like the point in time where I'd met Nathan. It was all around this Super Heist CD. It was pretty funny. And then I didn't see Nathan for a whole bunch of years. And then at the start of 2008, Interpol were playing at the convention center, and Jono had gotten me a ticket, and he said, "Oh, Nathan's going to come around. Remember Nathan?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah, cool. All right, let's do it. Let's catch up." So, yeah, kind of re-met Nathan again at that Interpol show, and I was like, "Yeah, let's try and keep in touch." And then a few months later, Jono actually was going to go overseas for like a bunch of years. He had a bit of an open-ended ticket, or maybe it was just like one massive holiday. Anyway, he had a going-away party over at Dooley's at the time downstairs, and Nathan was there. We just started chatting over beers, and I kind of said to him, "I want to start this band." By the end of it, he's like, "Yeah, dude, I'm keen to play and stuff." It's like, "Oh yeah, you play?" It's like, "Yeah, I know how to play guitar." And yeah, that was the nucleus of it, and that's kind of how I met Nathan and kind of started up the nucleus of Tape Off.
And so was he doing his education degree at the time?
Yeah, I think he must have been in his first year of teaching. So, yeah, so it was just the three of us. And we started getting it off the ground. And in the start of 2009, I remember in Rave magazine, there was an ad in the little classifieds there of a guitarist wanting to join a band. Influences are Deer Hunter, Sonic Youth, and DJ Shadow. I was like, wow, that sounds like my kind of guy. So I called him up, and it was Luke Zarlader. So the four of us started practicing together at the start of 2009. Nathan had told me about this place he had heard through a friend of a friend, this place called The Hangar in
Red Hill?
Red Hill. And he's like, we should go check it out. It was February 2009. It was a Saturday night, and Mr. Maps were doing their album launch at the QT Roundhouse. Not QT. Yeah, actually QT. The little, like, where La Boite Theatre is.
Oh, yep.
The little roundhouse there. They did their launch, and then afterwards they were having an after party at the Hangar. I'd never heard of this place. Couldn't find it. I had to ask a whole bunch of people, where's this Hangar place? Went down there, and my mind was blown. I'd finally found people that liked the same kind of music as me. That was one thing I'd struggled with for years, trying to find people that actually liked, strange music, Red Pitchfork, did all that kind of stuff, actually played music. And I had just found my friends. You know what I mean? That I will dare say that is the life-changing moment for me, discovering the Hangar. That night that Mr. Maps launched their, it was like a dual EP. And after we started going to the Hangar, Nathan and I were like, all right, let's ask these guys if we can put on a show there. Like, I remember when I first walked into the Hangar, Reenactment were playing. I had no idea who they were or what they were, but what blew my mind was the keyboard player was Shane Rudkin. Now, I knew him as the keyboard player in Regurgitator during the unit years. And the first show that I went to, my older cousin took me to go see Regurgitator at Festival Hall. And Shane was the keyboard player. And I remember Shane because he frightened me. Whenever I watched Regurgitator, he was such a unpredictable guy. He looked like he was always on the verge of just losing his shit. Would jump in the crowd and murder someone. Not murder, but I don't know. He looked like a dangerous guy. So fast forward 12 years later, I'm now in this underground party, and the guy that was in Regurgitator is playing in this band, making this cool music, and there was a guy dressed up in a full dog suit that came down as well, and he was like jumping everywhere in this dog suit. It was just, my senses were in overload. Yeah, I remember saying to Nathan, it's like, dude, I went to that Hangar place. We should totally try and book a gig there or something. I don't know. How do we do it? He didn't really know. He knew one of the guys, which turned out to be Coops, Greg Cooper, who played in Toy Balloon and was booking the Hangar. Yeah, over those coming months in 2009, started getting really friendly with Coops and Phil Laidlaw and Andrew White and Chris Perrin and Joel Edmondson as well. Yeah, slowly figured out this is the local scene that I'm in now. It was like night and day, slowly figuring out who sat where in which, music scene in Brisbane.
When did Tape Off get their first gig?
So the first gig was in November 2009 at the Hangar, and it was us, Sleepwalks, Card Houses, and The Belligerents. It was The Belligerents' first show ever.
Wow.
I knew Andy from The Belligerents really well at the time. We were hanging out a lot. He had a T-shirt label at the time called Dexter Rose that he was just making these T-shirts at the back of his house. And I told him about the Hangar, and he started to come down to the Hangar. He was like, oh, this is really cool. And he wanted to launch his T-shirt brand or something like that. He was like, oh, the Hangar would be a great place to do it. I was like, well, hey, let's hit two birds with one stone here. How about you have your T-shirt launch the same night that we play our first show? And he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And literally 3 weeks before the show, he gets on to me. He said, hey, there's this friend of my sister's. He's from the Sunshine Coast. His name's Lewis Stevenson. He was wanting to sort of jump on the bill. Could we get him on? And I'll play with him and all that kind of stuff. I went, yeah, you guys can start. And in those 3 weeks, they started a band. Lewis already had a bunch of songs. And 3 weeks later were The Belligerents.
Wow.
That night was huge. It was packed at that place.
Was that the first time you'd played like a gig in public, like besides your school stuff?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yes.
Were you nervous?
Remember, I was stressed. I'm a stressor. I'm one of those kind of people that I can't rest until everything has been thought of or checked off or something like that. So I was stressed earlier in the day. I remember that much. I don't think I was nervous. I don't think I ever really get nervous on stage. I think I'm lucky that way because I could not deal with it if I was that kind of person that got nervous on stage. I don't even think about it. I literally just go straight to the kit, have a little bit of a look around, and then just play.
By the time of the first show, was Nathan singing most of the lead vocals?
Oh, yeah. So Nathan was singing. Yeah, definitely.
How did that happen?
When we were writing, he was going to be on guitars. I was going to be on drums. So he is a wordsmith. He just wanted to sing about funny stuff at the time. So I just let him do it. I was like, yeah, cool. Like, all right, you're the singer now. I don't really want to sing. I was never comfortable with singing. So I just let him totally go for it. And Yen at the time was going to sing. Now, along the way, I'll have to backtrack a bit. Before the first show, in 2009, Yen was doing her thesis. She was doing a degree in engineering. And she did not have a lot of time to practice with the band. And we were like, that's fine. Like, we'll just practice on every once in a while. Like, we'll just keep writing songs. And then when we finally all get together, let's try and practice it and let's try and get good for this first show. So we had the show booked and, we had a couple of months to prepare for it. And it was getting to like 4 or 3 weeks out from this show that we hadn't seen Yen in like 2 or 3 months. But because she was busy with the thesis, and we're like, yeah, cool. Whenever she's free, she'll contact us. It's fine. And she finished the thesis, and then she got in contact, and it's like, yeah, I'm finished now. Cool. I'm like, congrats. Like, that's really awesome. We're good friends too at the time. It was like, that's really sweet. And I'm like, sweet. Well, when can we jam? She's like, I don't know. I just want to go catch up with friends and I want to do my own stuff. And at that time, I was totally in the mindset. It was like, well, we've got to start practicing, for this thing. Just like, I just so much I got to catch up on. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. So it made me think. I was like, so I guess you're kind of not into the band, maybe. I don't know. It was a weird conversation. Then. Yeah, for the next week, we're always just trying to figure out how we could do a practice or whatever, and just, all the conversations just sort of seemed disinterested in it. And I'm like, well, I got to kind of make a decision on it. There's this first show that I'm really hyped about, and I don't want to stuff up. What am I going to do? So I was like, well, maybe I should find somebody to back it up in case she doesn't want to play the show or something like that. So I turned to Brenton, who was also playing in Vi Fuse at the time, and I asked him if he'd be interested in playing this show with us. Not sure exactly kind of what's happening, but I just want to be prepared. And he's like, yeah, I'm down for it. Cool, all right. And so I kind of had him sort of locked in the background and kind of went back to Yen. I was like, so what's happening? She's like, we got this gig. I don't know. She was kind of sort of disinterested, but she was like, let's have a catch up this weekend at Rick's or whatever. It's like, okay, let's do that. And kind of in my mind, I'm thinking, well, no, it sounds like she really kind of doesn't want to do the band thing. So maybe I should just say to her, maybe, leave the band if you're not kind of interested in it. I want to really give this a red hot go. So anyway, I go to Rick's. Like Saturday morning, just catch up brunch at Rick's, and I'm sitting at a table, and she walks up the mall, and she takes a seat, and she's got tears in her eyes. I'm like, oh, what's up? What's wrong? She's like, I think my boyfriend and I just broke up. I'm like, that's not cool. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm in a sticky situation because I was about to say,
Are you about to make a horrible day for her the worst day for her?
yeah. So we chatted for a couple of hours and she started feeling better, but I was kind of like, yeah, going to raise the subject of the band again. And yeah, still had that same sort of disinterest about it. And I kind of just went, well, maybe you should leave the band. And she turned around, she's like, you're kicking me out? I'm like, oh, well, we want to get prepared for this kind of thing. You don't seem really interested in it. And she was kind of stormed off. And I was like, I now feel like the world's biggest asshole. She's just, her and her boyfriend have broken up and I just kicked her out of a band. What a fucking idiot I am. So I did not feel good that day at all. But yeah, we had a couple of practices with Brenton on bass. He just learnt the songs that we had. Yeah, we played the Hangar 2009.
Did you ever make up with Yen?
Yeah, yep. Later on, because with her engineering job, she had moved around a bit. But yeah, I've caught up a few times with Yen. Still a bit strained, obviously. Well, we haven't had a proper sort of catch up, but we'd always see each other. It took her a while to kind of get over it. Obviously, as you would. No doubting there. But yeah, it was pretty dicey there for a bit.
Now, how did Tape Off first hook up with Kelly Lloyd?
So 2010, we released the first EP, Unreal Unravel, and just kept playing local shows. We'd play kind of whatever shows we could, but I don't know, there was some sort of buzz about us in 2010. We were playing X and Y Bar a lot. Yeah, people had started hearing about us. I started getting friendly. Oh, and I was on the verge of starting at 4ZZZ at the time as well. In 2011, there was a call out in Time Off for bands to be part of the Tribute Arama.
Yes.
Thing that they had in the car park.
At Triple Z, yeah.
Yeah.
So they used to do this every year, and so local bands would come and do like tribute sets to some other band or to even just a general theme.
Yeah, there was for this particular one, there was going to be 4 shows in the month of February, I think, or March, and one was dedicated to the bands of Brisbane. One was dedicated to like TV shows. Another one was dedicated to female artists. 4th one, I cannot quite remember.
I remember this because Go-Go Fish were going to play the TV show one.
Oh, really? I didn't know this.
We rehearsed an entire set, devoted to the television shows of Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
So, like, theme from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a bunch of songs from the musical episode, theme from Angel, the Ballad of Jane from Firefly. Rehearsed a whole set, spent like months and months not doing our regular set and doing this.
Yeah.
That's when we originally brought in Angela Hibbert, actually, to do extra instruments.
No way.
And then it got cancelled.
It got cancelled. Correct. Yep.
So Tape Off, we're doing a Scream Feeder tribute set?
Yeah, yep. So it was going to be part of the Brisbane band thing, and we were going to do a Scream Feeder set, and yeah, it got cancelled. So we had already been practicing these Scream Feeder songs for a couple of months by that point. And I was like, well, it'd be a waste not to play these songs. So I think we just booked a show at X and Y Bar. And we mentioned on social media, I was like, yeah, we were going to play this Tribute to Rama thing, but it's been cancelled now. So, yeah, we're going to do a show at X and Y Bar. We're going to play these songs we've been practicing. And tagged Scream Feeder in it. And eventually they picked up on it, and Tim actually commented on it and went, oh, wow, cool. I was like, oh my God, it's Tim Stewart. And he's like, where? As typical Tim Stewart would do. And played the show. We played Dart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, High Seas. What else? Bunny. Yeah, had a lot of fun practicing those. And, Tim's like, I'm going to try and make it down the show. But he didn't make it. It was like Easter time or something like that. So he didn't make it. Pretty sure that's the show that Mount Augustus played as well.
Now, was this their final show?
This is the final show.
Right. So
I hope I'm not mixing up X and Y shows, because we did play a lot of them.
I think I was away because I love to go see Mount Augustus at this time, and I was really keen to see this show as well. And I don't think I'd seen Tape Off at this point, but I think I was in Sydney or something. I was out of town this weekend, and I was bummed. And then later on, got even more bummed because it turned out to be the final Mount Augustus show because Cam Smith broke up the band mid-set.
That was an interesting night. So I didn't really know Cam very well at the time. I remember Jeremy, because Jeremy Neal was playing drums. He was running late because Velociraptor were playing a show somewhere else down the road. Yeah, he was running late. He finally made it with like 10 minutes to spare before Mount Augustus started. I think it was a 2-band bill. Tape Off played first, then Mount Augustus. I remember after our set, just quickly going out back to say hi to some people and then coming back in time for Mount Augustus. And I think by the time I got back in, they'd already played 2 songs. And then the third song, it was going okay, but yeah, there was obviously some visible tension sort of happening. Cam, I remember, knocked over a mic stand with his guitar. Like, he'd been really like shredding at this guitar, and then the last note he just kind of like just lets go of the guitar and knocks over this mic stand. It was like, ooh, okay, it's a bit strange. And picks it up, and then they get into another song. And I think like I heard him say in the podcast you did with him, they were playing new songs that they were trying to figure out. It weren't quite going the way how he thought, so he'd started playing the song, and it wasn't quite getting to the point. They couldn't quite align themselves to figure out what was going to be the next, if this is finally going to be the chorus or whatnot. Yeah, you could kind of see him giving up, and he was like, thanks, good night. I was like, what? Is that it? It was only like 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it was. It was a very short set.
So Tim is aware that you were doing a Screen Feeder tribute thing. He couldn't make it to it. So, but what about Kelly? How did...
No, so Kelly didn't make it to it. So had no interaction with Kelly at that time. But we'd played the show, and I remember I tried to friend Kelly on Facebook, even though I hadn't met her, and she was not accepting it. Fair enough, because we hadn't met. But it was me just being daring and going, hey, I'm going to try and friend Kelly Lloyd on Facebook. And I was at work one day, and I got a notification on my phone saying, you are now friends with Kelly Lloyd on Facebook. I'm like, oh, yes, awesome. And then I get a message from her 2 minutes later. Yeah, it was her sending a message saying, hi, Branko, I'm Kelly. I'm sure you know who I am. Have you got a number I can call you on, or like, can we meet or something like that? I'm like, whoa, yeah, here's my number, or we can meet. Like, yeah, what's up? It was really quite immediate. She's like, oh, well, I'm actually playing this show at Beetle Bar tonight. Come down, let's meet. I was like, okay, yeah, cool, I can do that. Let's do it. And I remember this particular night, Nathan and I were going to go see Helmet at the Hi-Fi. So I called up Nathan. I'm like, dude, you'll never believe what just happened. I got a message from Kelly Lloyd. He's like, whoa, that's rad. He's like, yeah. She's like, come meet me down at the Beetle Bar. I've got something to talk to you about tonight. It's like, whoa, okay. So, yeah, we go to Beetle Bar, and she rocks in, and she's playing solo that night. It was part of like a Ladybugs night that they had at Beetle Bar. I believe Sabrina Laurie was booking it at the time. And she'd rocked up, and she had to be on stage in like 15 minutes. So she was like, hey, how you going? So you're Branko, right? I'm like, yeah, how you going? Hey, I'm Kelly. How you doing? So this is kind of quick. I'm sorry about this, but look, what's kind of happening is I'm going to put out this solo record soon, and I kind of wanted a backing band to come and play some of the songs, and I'd been recommended by some people that Tape Off would be a perfect match to do it. And I was wondering if you guys want to be my backing band. It's like, yes, yes. This sounds very awesome. Yes, I think we should totally do this. Cool, let's catch up later on and let's talk about this. And she's like, yep, sweet. So watched her play, and she was playing some tracks off of Magnetic North at the time. You know, it's still in their raw state. She had already recorded the album by that point. It had Jeff Hahn from Los Huevos and legendary Brisbane sound guy. He had played drums on it. She had recorded it with Derek Mudge, also from Scream Feeder. And she had some other players on it too, which I cannot remember who they are at the moment. But yeah, so she had the songs there, but she kind of wanted to start playing them live and get it on the road. So what a night. It was a big night. I still have the date in my calendar. I'm pretty sure it's the 23rd of June 2011. And I get a yearly notification when it comes up. It says, best day ever. Kelly asked us to be her band.
Oh.
That was cool. So, yeah, I still get a yearly reminder of that.
And how long did you play as her backing band?
Technically, as Tape Off, there was only 4 or 5 shows. We did a trek down south. We played at the Annandale in Sydney with Sounds Like Sunset. And we played as Tape Off first, and then Sounds Like Sunset played, and then we played as Kelly Lloyd. And then we played the Cambridge Hotel that next night to next to nobody. But that was a super, super fun night. I think it was our first time out of Brisbane as well. There was the Kurt Vile show. We played a Powerhouse show with her as well. I think it's just those 4 shows where it was Kelly and Tape Off in its full thing. With just Kelly and I, we played for about 2 years.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So we played a bunch of shows. We would have played, I reckon we would have played about a good 20, maybe 30 shows. It was quite a few. It was pretty awesome.
Was it around this time you joined Triple Z?
Yes. So at the start of 2011 is when Unnecessary Knowledge started.
How'd that show start? And what made you want to get involved in Triple Z?
So when Tape Off was going to the Hangar a lot, we'd met these 2 girls one night, Jasmine and Rachel, who were just on the door, and started chatting to them, and turned out that they had just been to Big Sound in 2009 and had met like Coops and Phil and all those guys, and they were both 18, like barely 18 at the time, and had moved. Rachel had moved from Innisfail, Jasmine had moved from Bowen, and they were kind of keen to start getting into the music industry. They didn't know each other from their respective cities, but they'd started doing the same uni course together. When they found out they were both from North Queensland, they had a bit of a kinship there. So, at the time, those 2 were really like thick as thieves, you know. Yeah, got chatting with them, and for a while there, we'd actually asked Jasmine to be our manager. And, yeah, Rachel was always, wherever Jasmine was, Rachel was there too. So, yeah, that's how I started got to know those 2. And then Jasmine and Rachel had a falling out, remember, around towards the end of 2010.
Do you know why?
No, I don't know why. But I had run into Rachel. No, Rachel, well, during this time when Jasmine was sort of faux managing Tape Off, Rachel was volunteering at Triple Z, I think doing a bit of new stuff, but also doing a bit of graphic design or something like that. And in the second half of that year, in 2010, she had her own show called Theme Me Up, Scotty. It was on midnights on Wednesday night. And I remember bumping into her in the Valley one night, and she was telling me about her radio show. I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. She's like, oh, you want to pop in? I was like, well, I actually finish work at midnight on Wednesday nights. Maybe I just might pop in. It's like, yeah, sweet. All right, well, give me a call. I'll let you in. And yeah, it worked out perfectly. I'd go finish work. I'd drive straight over to Triple Z and hang out at the radio station with her. It was really cool. And yeah, Theme Me Up, Scotty was a theme-based show. And, maybe one show was about chocolate and R&B songs about chocolate. So that was cool. And then towards the end of 2010, she said, I'm going to try and go for a show at a earlier slot. Would you like to be my co-host? I was like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. When? And we originally got Wednesdays 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And she called it Unnecessary Knowledge because she thought I knew too much about music. So that's how Unnecessary Knowledge started. It was all Rachel.
Did it come naturally to you being a radio DJ?
I guess a little bit. I mean, from years of listening to the radio, I thought I'd already had an idea of how I was going to approach what the show would sound like and how songs would seeg into each other. I'd like to think I had a pretty good grip on it from the start. Obviously, the first couple of shows were a bit shaky. I actually had, what I did was, how I tried to plan for the show was I had 2 CDRs filled with music. And I would try to, first song would be track 1, CD 1, and then track 1, CD 2, then track 2, CD 1, and so on and so forth. But I found that wasn't actually a very smart plan because I would forget what track I was up to on each disc. I'd never write out what was actually on the discs, and yeah, I would stuff that up. So I kind of threw that theory out the window and just started using the computer.
So all through this time, like starting Tape Off, being Kelly Lloyd's band, starting at Triple Z, so you're working these very late shifts at the printing press, printing newspapers. What hours did you have?
They were weird. So at the time, I was living in Kingston. I bought my old grandparents' house, which I did in 2009. And my work hours were usually something like, it could be 12 to 10 or 4 to 12 or 2 to 10 or... it was always... They were all over the joint. And it was like this big rotating roster. I'd work weekend nights. Yeah. It was usually never any earlier than midday.
Having such an irregular, semi-nocturnal schedule, what does that do to your health?
I try to keep a 9 to 5 body clock.
Yeah.
Mental health or physical health?
Either.
Well, mental health wasn't great. Physical health, yeah, not that great either. Because I just, routine would be wake up in the morning. I'd still wake up at 7 or whatever, whenever the sun came up, and do whatever I had to do at home in the morning. I'd rarely leave home unless I had to go to the shops or anything like that in the mornings. I'd probably just go write music and then go to work. And I was always that kind of person where I wouldn't make lunch. I'd always get Subway, whatever. If I knew that I was going to be at work for a whole bunch of hours, I'd always kind of overeat because I knew I was going to be stuck in the same position for like 8 hours. So, yeah, in terms of physical health, like I wasn't eating very well, working those kind of hours. But mentally because I was still in my 20s, working these late hours, I felt like I was missing out on a lot of nightlife and a lot of social events.
You said earlier you're a stressor. Was it a stressful job as well?
No, the job itself wasn't actually that stressful. It was pretty easy. We had a TV in the corner of the room, and I just sit down and watch Simpsons all day, all night anyway, during the shift. I was essentially the guy that pushed the print button and sent pages to different print sites. And these were news limited papers, and there was a lot of downtime in between editions. So, yeah, it wasn't a stressful job at all. But what stressed me was that, I was missing out on a lot of social events or bands that I wanted to go see. And, I want to start this music thing. How am I going to start this music thing if I'm not out seeing music and being amongst it. In 2013, I had a massive mental breakdown. So at the start of 2013, I was doing Unnecessary Knowledge, which was on a Friday Arvo. We had started recording the Tape Off album. We had started recording Chipper, which I was recording myself. I'd never worked on an album before, so it was like, getting super excited for that. Like, how do you make an album? I was starting to record other bands. I had recorded DZ Death Rays. I was playing with Kelly, recording some stuff with her. There was a few other bands that were around that I was recording and trying to mix at the same time. But I was smoking a lot of weed. I was living out of Kingston, which I hated. I had a mortgage that was sucking all my money out. I hated the distance from the city and the distance from any sort of social circles as well, and like going to shows. Never felt safe in that area at all. I could never... I never felt comfortable just leaving the house, going for a walk to the end of the street and back. That was actually pretty terrifying. I had, lots of anxiety about that. I remember at one point, I had some next door neighbors. Obviously, the house next door was a rented house. They had these two massive dogs that would just bark at anything. And when they learnt how to jump that fence, they would come onto like my driveway at night and like start barking at me when I'd go and try and open up my garage door. It was pretty scary. It's a pretty notorious joint. It's not a safe place. So all those things had just crashed at one time, and it was the day before Good Friday in 2013. At my work, there was only 2 public holidays where you actually had a day off in my job, and they were like the day before Good Friday and the day before Christmas, because they're the only 2 days of the year where we don't print papers. So on this Thursday, I was going to take the day off. Wasn't going to do anything. Went and visited my parents for a bit, said hi, then came home, and I was just going to wait for my girlfriend, my now wife, Angela, to finish work and then come home. We'd just chill out and watch movies or whatever later on that night. So, I remembered that I'd probably smoked a joint or something like that and probably started drinking some vodka with like some Fanta grape at the time, nice concoctions of like soft drink and vodka. And I started getting a bit of a feeling in my chest. I was like, oh, that's kind of annoying, and didn't really think much of it. And then, anyway, Ange had finally come over after she'd finished work. And I kind of said to her, I was like, I don't know, I've got this feeling in my chest. I don't know if it's like a heart attack or something or whatever. I'm trying not to think about it. It's like, oh, well, okay, well, let's try and figure it out. And I'm like, I don't know. It's like, you want to go to hospital? No, I don't want to go to hospital. I don't know what it is. Anyway, it turned out to be a panic attack, and I'd never experienced one before in my life. So I remember that next day, it was just like in a ball, like in the fetal position in bed with this ache in my chest, not knowing what the hell was going on. I was like, is it a heart attack? Is it this or that? I eventually did go to the hospital, and I remember that when they'd finally had done all the tests and had come back, they're like, yeah, dude, you're just stressed. That's all it is. You're not having a heart attack. Your heart's totally fine. Your bloods are totally fine. Blood pressure is totally sweet. You're just having a panic attack. I was like, what's a panic attack? He's like, okay, well, have you been stressed lately? I was like, well, yeah, it's this and that, and I've had a lot of stuff on my mind. He's like, well, that's probably it. You're just experiencing the physiological effects of a panic attack. I was like, whoa, okay. So 2013, I had a massive crash. I couldn't go to work. It got so bad to the point where I couldn't drive around anymore. I'd freak out too much. It got to the point where I couldn't walk around the neighborhood anymore. Like I had just anxiety was just at an all-time high. So it was right before I went to the United States on a holiday with Ange as well. And I was thinking to myself, that's it. I've ruined myself. You know, how have I gotten this far? And there was just so much pent up sort of like, not regret, but kind of like, why have I spent all my 20s working this job that I don't even want? Why have I bought this house? Why have I done this? I just want to be a musician, you know, and do that. But yeah, all came to a head in 2013, and then I moved out of Kingston, and then I moved in with Kelly. Actually, after I came back from my US trip, Kelly and her boyfriend Stephen over at Barton started living there, and was starting to get on the mend.
Besides moving, what did you do to get better?
Kelly had recommended seeing her doctor. Up until that point, I didn't really have a regular doctor. So she recommended that I go see her doctor and have a chat about it. And did just that. And it was amazing. Started putting me on Lexapro straight up. And after that, life just got a lot better. Yeah, nothing severe. It doesn't have any severe side effects or anything like that. It's just, it's a medication that kind of caps the highs and caps the lows. Okay, right. So you kind of always sort of sit in the middle. So you don't feel the extremities of those things anymore, which is what anxiety was totally fueling at the time. So,
do you still use that?
Yeah, I'm still on it. I mean, I could come off it, but I think there's just sometimes when work just gets a little bit too stressful. It's a nice safety barrier to have because, I feel like that nervous breakdown that I had, like I totally like cooked myself with how much stress I could actually take on.
Did you cut back any of your like responsibilities or anything?
Yeah, I did. So, I mean, Chipper, I didn't look or listen to any of the Chipper stuff for months. I left that well alone. Wasn't recording any more bands. I started saying no to people. What else? Well, I cut weed out. Stopped smoking weed.
Had that ever been like an anxiety producing thing before? Because like I know some people are particularly susceptible to having anxiety brought on by smoking weed.
I feel like it was a bit of a coincidence. Like it definitely didn't help.
Right. Yeah.
See, I was never like a high school stoner or anything like that. I only started smoking weed in my late 20s, mid to late 20s. And when I was living out of Kingston, because I hated that area so much, it was my escape. So I was smoking a lot more of it back then, and work sucked as well. So yeah, there was just a lot of negativity during that period. So weed sort of helped with that. But when finally had the panic attacks, I just went, well, I need a sea change. So it was just luck that Kelly's housemate, Kate, who plays in Texas Tea, Kate Jacobson, she was moving out and she was going to move overseas. So they had a room available, and I was like, this is exactly what I need. I need to be closer to friends, closer to the city. I want to get out more. I want to see more people. I want to do that first, and then start thinking about tape off again. So, yeah, definitely started paring things back and then slowly attach myself to things when I was comfortable with it.
When you had the breakdown, did that affect Ange as well?
Yeah, she was very understanding and very supportive because she deals with depression a lot of the times. So she was mega, mega helpful with listening to my concerns, but also sort of challenging those concerns to try to rationalize the anxiety, like whatever it was that I was anxious about. And that would usually bring me sort of down and bring me down to a level-headed area. And yeah, it was a massive, massive help. And Kelly as well. Kelly was a huge help with coming out of anxiety attacks and all that. Yeah.
And so slowly, Chipper continued to come together eventually.
Yeah, eventually I started getting comfortable with mixing again. I had actually just recorded, before the massive panic attack, I'd recorded the Gaza Strips. I remember we went to the Hangar, which it wasn't a venue anymore. It was just a rehearsal space by that point, and recorded their first EP. And yeah, I sat on that record for a couple of months. Well, they didn't really give me a deadline of when it needed to come out, but one day they kind of decided, oh, no, this needs to come out like now. Can you mix it? I was like, I'm still really... At the time, I didn't really feel comfortable with mixing at the time, but I got through it, and that EP came out. I still don't like the sound of it, but other people really like it, so I guess that's a good thing. But that's my own self-editing or self-deprecation right there.
Were you trying to make like a career out of recording and mixing?
Yeah, because I knew I hated my job at the newspapers so much, and I definitely wasn't going to be hanging around for that.
Right.
The recordings I was doing out of my place at Kingston was called the Casa Branko. Yeah, and that was named by Luke Dunell, or Possum, who played in Statue, and plays in Horsefight. Lives over in the UK now. We recorded a lot of Horsefight stuff at Kingston. And yeah, one night I just called it the Casa Branko, and it stuck for a bit. That's
pretty good.
There was even a music article. I think it was still Time Off, or maybe it was The Music by that point. But yeah, they were starting to do articles on like local studios around the place, and Steve Bartlett asked me if I would like to contribute my studio to the piece. I went, yeah, sure. And I had to come up with a name for it. It was like, name of studio, the Casa Branko. It looked so lame in print. And yeah, I didn't get a lot of work out of that article, sadly.
So was part of Chipper recorded at Cam's as well?
No, Chipper was all recorded at Kingston. Actually, most of it was recorded at Kingston, but another year was recorded out of my Uncle and Auntie's farm. And so was Peggy's Lookout.
Was Brenton still on bass?
Yes. He was. Brenton was definitely there for the start of the making of Chipper. But then he moved to Melbourne. His wife got a job down in Melbourne, so they moved. And it's when I asked Cam to jump in. Brenton wanted to kind of do like a bit of a going away show at the waiting room. I remember Cam had put up on the waiting room Facebook that there was a date free. Brenton was like, oh, let's try and book it as a going away show. But for some reason, someone else couldn't do it. Nathan couldn't do it, or Luke couldn't do it. I can't remember why. But anyway, I talked to Cam on the phone. I said, oh, hey, about that date, I don't think we can do it now because somebody can't do it. So sorry to let you down, man. But yeah, it was going to be Brenton's last show. He said, oh, so what are you doing about a bass player afterwards? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't thought of anything. But yeah, by the end of the conversation, he was like, well, yeah, I'm keen to play bass with Tape Off. I was like, oh, well, if you're keen, yeah, I'd be totally keen to have you on board. So that was how Cam came on board with Tape Off.
Was he doing Unnecessary Knowledge with you by then?
No, not yet. No, Rachel was still my co-host at the time. So it was probably a few months after he joined Tape Off that he started joining me on Unnecessary Knowledge, if memory serves me correctly. When Rachel and I were doing Unnecessary Knowledge, We were totally like chalk and cheese. Such different musical tastes. You could totally tell what Rachel was playing, what I was playing. Yeah, I kind of started thinking to myself, oh man, it'd be awesome to do this show with maybe somebody that had a musical taste a little bit more in line with mine. It wasn't so drastically different. And turned out that Rachel was moving to Sydney because she'd just gotten a job with pedestrian.tv. So when she moved, was like, well, okay, I have this opportunity now to have a co-host on board. Who would I go for? And Cam was like the first person I'd thought of just because of the bands that he'd recorded, but not only that, but, you know, his vast knowledge of music as well.
Even more unnecessary knowledge.
Yeah, I think he joined me once, actually. There was a week where Rachel wasn't there. He may have joined me as just a guest co-host for a show, and it might have stemmed from that I thought it'd be a good idea.
And so by the time Chipper came out, Cam was in the band.
Yep.
Had Luke left by then?
So I was still living in Barden with Kelly at the time when Luke had left. That was towards the end of 2013. So we were actually going to ask Rowan Cooper, who played in Tragic Athletic, and was also Greg Cooper's brother. We were going to ask him to play guitar because we thought he'd be a perfect fit. But he was living in Melbourne at the time. It wasn't really going to work out. And at the time, he was going to move to the States or something like that. It wasn't going to work. I was like, oh, okay, that's a bummer. And Nathan suggested Ben. It was like, oh, why don't we get Ben on board? Now, Ben at the time was, you know, up until that point, he was playing in Toy Balloon and he was on the drums. And I'd only known him as a drummer. He'd been in another band called Capital as well before that, and he was playing guitars, but I never saw them.
And how come Luke left? Was he another person who moved south? Or?
No, he didn't move. Luke, I don't know. He just drifted apart. He started playing with the Rational Academy.
Oh, right, cool.
Around about that time, and they started touring. And I think at the time he wasn't really into the music that we were making for Chipper. So we could see his vibe starting to kind of diminish. Yeah, I think he said to Nathan that he was leaving the band because it was while I was overseas. So, yeah.
And did you and Nathan end up like overdubbing a lot of the guitars on Chipper? Because there's a lot of overdubs on that, on the record.
I play a lot on it. There's some bass on there that's mine. Whatever Luke recorded, like his tracks are still there. There was no like re-recording over stuff. Yeah, Luke's. I mean, and it says in the credits which songs Luke played on. Like I remember, no matter how you dress it up, like Nathan, Luke, and I were all at my place recording that, and I did the bass on that song. And Where to Begin, which was actually one of my favorite songs off that record.
Yeah.
I'm always baffled as why nobody else seems to like that song. We've never played it live because we just pulled it off that one night when we recorded it and can never remember how to play it. But Luke's on that song as well. He's also on Peggy's Lookout. Yeah, the rest of it would have just been mainly Nathan and I.
And when the record, like it was a long time in the making, I guess.
Yeah, it took us like 3 years.
When it finally came out, were you happy with it?
Nope. No. Yeah, I was so uninterested. Not uninterested, that's not the word. I remember having a conversation with Kelly when it was finished. It was about to come out. And I was like, I think the record's done, but I don't know, I'm not really happy with it. And I was like, have you like never been happy with any of the Scream Feeder records after you finished? She's like, oh God, yeah, all of them. I hate all of them. No, I hate it. It was like, yeah, I thought every record when we had finished it, I always just thought they were awful. And maybe she still feels that way as well. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, we totally bonded that we'd have this self-dread about this piece of art that we were about to release out into the world, thinking that, we could have done better or could have done this, could have done that.
Did Nathan feel the same way?
No, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think we've ever actually talked about it. No, I think he was always pretty happy. I mean, with Chipper, because it was such a... I took on a lot with that record. There was a lot of blood, sweat and tears in that record on my part from recording it and mixing it and all the mental health stuff that was happening at the time as well. When I'd finished with it, like, I still wasn't really up to scratch with my mixing skills. And plus, because when I was finishing the mixes, I was living at Kelly's place, I didn't really have a proper mixing setup. Most of it was, those final mixes were being done on headphones by that point. So it's the sound of it is, yeah, not how I envisioned it. Yeah, I don't think it was quite finished when it was done, but I was so over it that I had to get it out. I was just like, you know what? This is the best that I can do at the moment. I think I just need to leave this alone. It was, I just kept picking at it, you know, like a scab. I was just like, I have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I don't think I was really making anything much better or worse or whatever. I just needed to just stop it.
Have you warmed up to it at all since then?
Yeah, I've re-listened to it, and yeah, I can still listen to it. It sounds fine. I don't love it. I like it. I do like it, and I like that other people like it too.
I love Chipper.
You love Chipper?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have said the same thing, which is totally rewarding, but I don't know. It would have sounded different had I'd had some better skills, better mixing skills, and maybe had a better situation as well. So
I think I think I love it because I'd seen Tape Off quite a few times before the album came out. And for a while, like as a band, you're a bit loose. Like sometimes shows could be a little hit or miss with Tape Off. Sometimes you would be dead on it. Sometimes it would be a bit all over the shop.
Yeah.
And the album demonstrated the best of what the band could be, all in one package. Yeah,
well, I mean, it was recorded in bits and pieces.
Yeah, which is funny because I've and especially when you compare it to Broadcast Park, which was recorded
as
totally the opposite way, 95% live or whatever.
Yeah,
and you can hear that, but I guess at the time you didn't have that reference point of knowing what a Tape Off live on record sounded like.
Yeah, yeah. And we were writing songs as we were going with Chipper as well. Yeah, none of those songs were completed before actually recording. What the process for Chipper was Nathan would come over with a song idea. Sundays would always be our Tape Off day, and usually be at my place, and all the amps and drums, recording equipment was always at my place. It would always be in my granny flat, the Casa Branko. So, Sunday mornings, usually at 11 o'clock, Nathan would come around, or Brenton and Luke at whatever time it would have been. They would come around and they'd be there for probably, 5 or 6 hours. Nathan would usually be like, hey, I've got this idea. What do you reckon? And I'll quickly set up a Pro Tools session and just get them to record, some sort of structure of whatever it is, quickly bang that in and look at it and go, oh, okay, maybe 2 more of these or 4 more of those or less of this. And then I'll quickly put some bass over it. So I'd quickly record a bass part and then I'd quickly record a drum part, and that would be the song. It's like a glorified demo, I guess you could say. It was, hey, I've got an idea. Quickly record it. Okay, quickly this, quickly that. Bam, we got a sandwich. Song is done. And then we just kept adding stuff on top.
So after it came out, and at first you weren't super happy with how it was sounding. Did you make the decision like really early on that, okay, the next album we're not doing it that way again?
It wasn't as concentrated as that. So we had started recording Broadcast Park. We'd started writing it not long after Chipper had come out. Because Ben was new to the band, relatively new in 2014, he was just learning all the songs that we were playing in the set. By the time that Chipper finally came out, we were like, all right, let's start writing some new songs while we're in practice. And yeah, I think Tape Off started a new sound with all four of us in the room. I think that's why those two records sound... I don't know if they sound radically different. I guess they both sound like Tape Off.
Yeah, no, not radical. I think just because I've been listening to the band for so long, and heard some of the songs on Broadcast Park are quite old, like Vigorous Lover.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Nathan do that solo as Fred Savage Beast
Yes.
years and years ago.
Yes.
And a lot of the songs sounded very familiar to me the first time I heard the record, because I remember them being live. But then, like, some of them, it seems like they got longer on record. Like it's quite a jammy record. Like in a lot of them, they seem built around Cam's bass riffs.
Yep.
Because I guess the difference between that kind of live record and the assembled Chipper style record is that with Chipper, I guess you must have constantly been re-listening to what you had recorded and then having ideas of, we can put this there, add this here. Whereas live, you're all in the room together, and if something is working, it's more difficult to change something if you have a new idea, because it might mess with someone else's bit that they're doing. And so like the songs get long and there's more space and it's about a groove rather than adding all these tiny little bits and pieces.
Yeah, definitely. Like Chipper, by the end of it, was like a cake with so many layers on top that that the bottom of it can barely kind of stand up.
Right.
There was just so many. We put so many layers on top. This one, there's not that many layers at all. It's pretty stripped back, but it's much rawer in the ingredients that are there. But it's just much louder and groovier. I would say groovier, because we're all actually trying to go off each other's grooves to get to the end product. So I remember Micronations, when we started writing that, that was a concentrated effort to make it a long song. We wanted to make a Noi, krautrock track, a la like, Total Control and stuff like that. The meat of that song was around for ages, but one of the last things to be written was what Nathan and Ben were going to do in the breakdown. It took them ages to figure out what they were going to do there. So we had been playing that song since 2015, but for a long time there, it was super, super, super loose. So yeah, those guitars were done later on. But when we did write them, it was like, let's kind of, it can't just be anything. I wish it could have just been anything. It'd probably sound just as good, but let's actually try and write this properly and have little parts and stuff like that. And I think it's come out pretty goddamn good. I have a lot of people coming to me saying that they could listen to Micronations for days, which I'm totally happy with.
It seems like Tape Off went away for a while between the albums.
Yeah.
I guess you were all off getting married. Some of you were having kids.
Yeah.
Were you writing throughout this whole period, or were there times when, like, the band there was actually nothing happening with it?
No, so we actually recorded most of Broadcast Park in April 2015.
Wow.
So not long after Chipper was out, those songs were recorded. Cam recorded it all. I was just going to mix it this time. I needed to offload some of that work. I've had learnt my lessons from Chipper. I got to, try not do everything. I got to just relax and just do what I can. So I took on the mixing, and because we didn't really have a deadline. We just kind of took it at our own pace. We were still playing shows in 2015. Towards the middle of 2015, I started booking The Bearded Lady. So that started taking up most of my time. So I wasn't really having as much time to mix the record. And I had started working on Live Delay as well. And Live Delay was taking up a lot of my time.
And Live Delay is on 4ZZZ. That's a live music specialty show. So we go around, well, yeah, it's mostly the Z team. And also sometimes we source it from other community stations. So it's full live sets.
That's right.
That we do on, is it still on Friday nights on terrestrial?
No, it's on Thursday mornings.
Thursday mornings,
on,
right.
On 4ZZZ at 9 a.m. and on Z Digital at 7 p.m. on Sunday nights.
Yeah, and this was, so Darren Murray started Live Delay, right? Yeah.
Yep. And then Josh Watson took over from him for a while, and then I took over from Josh. So I've been doing Live Delay for the past 3.5 years, just over that. Yeah, so when I started taking on Live Delay, all my time sitting in front of the computer was mixing Live Delay sets, not mixing the tape off record. And yeah, I had quit working at the papers. After 10 years, I'd quit at the end of 2014. So I was going to try and spend more time mixing tape off record. But yeah, Live Delay started chewing into much more time than I thought it was going to. For the love of it, totally, because I wanted to make Live Delay really awesome and always bring awesome content. But teach myself how to become a better mixer by mixing much more live stuff. So I took my time with Broadcast Park. Nobody was really knocking on our door to say, hey, let's put this record out. We'd still play shows and people would always keep asking, oh, when's it coming out? I'd always say to them, well, yeah, I reckon towards the end of this year, yeah, let's do it. So I was constantly getting hounded about this record that we had recorded. But yeah, didn't actually have anybody say, hey, let's put out the record. Sonic Masala didn't really have a lot of money. And plus, when Chipper came out, we were at parity with the US dollar, which made it pretty cheap to get all those records pressed over at Pirates Press. And not long after Chipper came out, the dollar went to crap and it was going to cost us a lot more to get it repressed. So we actually didn't repress Chipper. So yeah, all those copies are all sold out. So we weren't quite sure if Sonic Masala were going to put out the album. We thought maybe let's try to approach someone else to put it out. And yeah, just over time, had just talked to Steve Bell and Michelle Padovan at Cool 'Em by Sound. Like, they're both great mates. I worked with Michelle at Q Music for a couple of years as well. And at 4ZZZ, she was one of the station, co-managers at the station. So
She was the one who did my volunteer training.
Really? Mm-hmm. There you go. So, yeah, I think by chance, we just had a chat and, they'd started up Cool 'Em by Sound and they'd put out Spiral Stairs and Shrapnel and Thigh Master and that kind of stuff. And we're like, oh, would you be interested in the tape off record? And they're like, yeah, let's do this. And we're like, ooh, okay. Oh, someone's actually interested. We should probably finish this record then. And by that point, it was just coming down to minute little mixing changes and stuff. Finally, somebody just said, okay, let's do this. And we finally came up with a date, finally got it pressed, and here we are. It's finally out.
And as I said at the start, it seems like now, how was this, nearly 10 years into the band or something?
Almost.
It seems like now you're finally making a push and playing the game, doing these big sound showcases, getting management, booking. Why now when you're on your mid-30s, married, have kids?
Yeah. We move slow. I mean, yeah, nobody knocked at our doors when it came to management or booking or any of that kind of stuff. We have always been very DIY. We've always had that DIY ethic. We always booked our own shows, recorded ourselves, email, radio stations for interviews and airplay and stuff like that. We did it all ourselves. We didn't do a great job of it, but we did the best we could with the resources that we had. So I totally, like, I feel like the roadmap on how to start a band, how to be a band, was when I watched Fugazi's Instrument documentary. When I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, that's how a band operates. Like a well-respected band operates like that. I think that's just how we've done it. And we've done the best that we can. And now we just finally have help, because I think we've done the best that we can. I don't think it's fair on the music itself. I feel like a lot of people would really enjoy the music, but we're not doing the best job at communicating with other people that it's actually there. I mean, it's very hard to break through all the noise that is coming at us daily in 2018. So Joe Woolley, who manages us now, is a good mate. I've known him for a bunch of years. When, he started managing Screen Feeder and all that. Actually, at one of our album launch shows that we did at Sonic Sherpa, we played a set and he was there, and I just said to him, hey, what do you think about managing us? And he was like, oh, you need a manager? I was like, it'd be nice. And he went away and he thought about it. He called me up a couple of days later, and I knew that he had been thinking about it. Like, he was obviously very excited by the idea of it, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's why we've got Joe on board now, and Will and Braden from PS Music Group were just fans of the band as well. And yeah, there was an opportunity there. They saw we were playing at Big Sound. They were like about to knock on our door anyway, but they said, well, we'll come to Big Sound and we'll watch it and see what we think. And they saw it and like, yeah, well, I was pretty certain this was going to work right away even before I saw you guys or seen you guys. Now I'm really certain that's going to work out really nicely. So, yeah, that's how that's kind of worked out. So why has it taken so long? Or
Well, no, it just seems like this wasn't a path that you were ever interested in before. Like I saw, earlier in the year when Day In, Day Out came out, there was a review for you on Triple J Unearthed. Like, what?
Yeah.
Tape offer on Triple J Unearthed? What?
Well, it was like we've just finally had started getting advice, or maybe some things that we should start doing to cast the net a little bit wider to get heard. So yeah, I don't know if people like think that we're selling out as.
I don't think that's the.
No,
I don't think that's not even a dichotomy of DIY, and so that's not even how anything works anymore.
No. I understand what you're getting at. Like, yeah, for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I just did not think you were that kind of band. I just thought you weren't interested in it. It's like, It's not that we were never interested in it. It was just we were never approached, and we just kept doing our thing. We didn't lose sleep over people not wanting to, sign us to do whatever. We just kept doing our own thing, and I don't know, people just always liked it. I mean, we know a lot of people in higher places that really like us, but I guess they've always assumed that we just preferred being just DIY and maybe just left us alone for that fact. Maybe that's one angle, but I don't know. We're all pretty. I think we all have a pretty low self-esteem about our band. It's always been like that with Tape Off, like Nathan and I. We super enjoy what we do, but we know it's not popular. It's not chart-topping stuff. So I think we give each other like really low expectations of the great work. I mean, we're always happy with what we're sort of doing, the songs that we're writing and stuff. But the fear of, rejection or people not liking it was probably just feeling that we just go, oh, well, we just put it out. Hey, it's really cool. Just get it out there. And I don't know, maybe somebody will like it. I guess that's how we've approached it. It's not the best way of running a band, but it's nice that, yeah, we finally have a little bit of help, and which has raised our self-esteem a bit higher, I think, which is what you need, which is what you need to actually enjoy what you do. Because after a while, like the last tour that we just did, like, you know, it cost us quite a bit of money, because we went to Western Australia this time as well, which is always fun. It's always great seeing those people, but it's not cheap. And when we're not selling a lot of records or whatever, playing a lot of shows that are making great money, then, you know, we'll take a bit of a personal hit. So I think after this tour, it was like, well, if we keep doing this, we're not going to be enjoying this much. So we've had to turn that around.
So what are your plans for the next year?
I know we're going to get back into writing, because we don't want it to be another 4 years for another record to come out. We want it to be much more immediate. I think we're going to try doing singles next year.
Ah.
I don't know. It's something we haven't done, but...
You did that one, let's have a baby.
Yeah, we did that, Let's Have a Baby. That was for our friend Zoe Damage. She ran a magazine called Very Live, and it was like a black and white photography magazine. With every copy, it came with a 7-inch split record with 2 bands, you know, one band each side doing a song. And she decided in 2015 that she was going to up stumps and not print Very Live anymore, because it was too taxing on her. It was too expensive, and she didn't have time for it anymore. So she was going to have one last issue, but it was going to be like 3 7-inch LPs, and it was going to be short songs. So it was going to be much more artists crammed into the thing. And we had played Let's Have a Baby a few times. I think that also started off as a Fred Savage Beasts solo thing. Yeah. He wrote it about the neighbours across the road from him that would always yell at each other, like have crazy domestic arguments, like verbal arguments for, it would seem like hours, and then all of a sudden the argument would stop and he would just hear the fucking noises later on, and he was kind of like, oh wow, like, so that's the whole fuck you, let's have a baby part. It was always pretty funny. So those people don't live there anymore, from what I understand, but that song was about them. So yeah, we gave that to Zoe, recorded that for Zoe, and yeah, it's super cool. So it's only available on that 7-inch that came out the time. Cam is still pissed that we didn't include it on Broadcast Park. He's like, we should have kept that for the album. Yeah, we could, but you can still find it online. Yeah, Triple Z still play it.
Yeah,
I know kids in class kicking ass. Like Danica loves playing that song.
Now you finally found in your paying work, kind of found a way to put your audio expertise in. So you're working for 4BC now,
yeah,
as your day job.
Yeah.
What do you do there?
So I started there in March 2017, and I started as an outside broadcast technician. So I was going to the Broncos games at Suncorp Stadium, and being a on-site engineer. So I would hook up all the announcer mics into the mixer and the ref feed and the crowd mic, all that. Put that all into a mixer, and then I would have to use a piece of hardware to dial into the studio back at 4BC via ISDN lines, or now we use IP, which is the internet. And just send audio back to the station and mix a live broadcast of the footy games.
And you've done a bunch of them at 4ZZZ, of course, in a volunteer capacity, as we often have OBs at gigs and special events like the Reclink Cup and stuff. Yeah.
The Reclink Cup and like at Woodford and stuff in the car park. So, Andrew Brent, who, when I first met him, came to 4ZZZ as a volunteer. He was out of work. He's actually... a pretty amazing person in that he used to work for Fairlight CMI, the guys that used to make the synthesizers back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, and people like Devo and Ivor Davies from Icehouse. He was a massive champion of the brand, and ZZ Top used them and all that kind of stuff. So he used to work for them, and he was actually their guy on the ground in the States. He's told me some stories. He actually appears on Ministry's Psalm 69, like the big Ministry record, the actual song called Psalm 69. There's a voice that says, "Congregation, please be seated."
And that's Andrew.
That's Andrew. That's
Wow.
my boss at work. He was helping Ministry out with the recording of that record because they had a Fairlight machine there, and Al Jorgensen just said, "Hey, Andrew, come over here," and wrote down whatever it was on his hand and said, "Read this," and that's the take. That's on the record. So, yeah, this guy's amazing. Anyway, and he moved his family back to Australia back in, after 9/11 because he was like, well, this place ain't safe anymore. And started, working. He had a electrical repairing business for a while and did a lot of that, but a couple of years ago, his business went bust and he was out of work. So he just came to Triple Z to volunteer because he had spare time while he was still looking for a job. And, helped out with revamping the 4ZZZ outside broadcast kit and became our outside broadcast guy. And that's where I met him. And not long after that, he got in this job at 4BC as the boss of engineering. And he just called me up one day and said if I'd be interested. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Shouldn't be too hard. And I've been doing that ever since. Then late last year, around November 2017, after I got married, after I had come back from honeymoon, he asked me if I wanted to start panel operating for the Drive Time show, which I said, yeah, let's do it. And yeah, that's what I also do during the day as well. I sit there on the panel and just push all the buttons and put all the audio to air.
Who's the host of that show? Well,
it was Ben Davis, and in July they had a change, and now it's Mark Braybrook.
Right.
Mark also commentates all Broncos games as well that I'd work on.
What was it like going from, you're still at community radio, but you must have a very unique view because you get to see how commercial radio operates while still being at community radio. What was that adjustment like?
Wasn't as chalk and cheese as I thought it might have been, actually. A lot of my community radio learning has paid dividends with being in a commercial radio station. But I've learnt so many more tricks at a commercial radio station as well, in a technology sense and in a announcer sense as well, like how to interact with listeners better. Maybe that's something that I haven't really been the best at on 4ZZZ in previous years. But working at a commercial station, I've learnt what I think is more engaging content and what makes the listener, I guess, love your show more and the content that you're playing.
What kind of tricks?
It's all in the language of it, really. I think, really talking to the listener, not only talking to the listener, but kind of talking in a way how you're talking to a whole city of listeners. So now you'll hear me on Unnecessary Knowledge. I like to say, good morning, Brisbane. How you doing, Brisbane? I want to talk to the city as a whole. I don't want to sound like I'm just either speaking to myself or maybe just one listener. I want to try a wider approach and also try to interact, try to get people to maybe, text in something if there's some subject that I've touched upon, rather than just keeping it to total just on-air chatter. I've started to go, okay, well, hey, what do you think of this? Text me on the 4ZZZ text number and maybe get a response, and then you can dwell on that a bit. You can get a bit of chat happening. Because at 4BC, it's talkback radio. They barely play any music. So those announcers have to talk for a solid 40 minutes of an hour, whatever it isn't ads, you know. So, yeah, lots of those sorts of things I've sort of picked up, and yeah, had a new appreciation for radio announcing.
Can you see yourself being a lifer in radio now?
Yeah, in radio I can, definitely. I always had keen interests when I was a kid about radio. I always used to sit and look at the sky and try to imagine like radio waves traveling through the air. Trying to like, how do we receive this transmission? Trying to picture it. I always used to do that as a kid. So, and now I'm starting to learn how that actually happens now, almost by accident. You know, I think I have Rachel to thank for my career start in radio. If it wasn't for her asking me to just come to Triple Z and say hi, or to co-host a show with her, I don't know if I would have been in radio. Might have still just been still working at jobs that I really didn't like. I mean, I would have tried to have gotten my sound business up and running a little bit more, 1000 hertz, but no, it's nice to actually have a job in radio.
And like the new Tape Off album is Broadcast Park and is in the photos of all the radio towers up on Mount Cootha. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the actual photos of towers in India.
Oh, okay.
So they're not my photos, but I did go to Mount Cootha to take a bunch of photos of the towers up there.
Were they not aesthetic enough?
Yeah, just the positioning just wasn't quite matching what I had in my head. It was tricky to get good shots. So I tried that angle, wasn't quite working for me. So then I started looking online. I found some online images and saw ones that I liked. And yeah, there was this one photographer who had some great images of towers in India. Got in touch and was like, yeah, cool, go for it.
What I meant to ask this earlier. What is the origin of the name Tape Off?
So Nathan came up with the name. Originally, we were going to be called Branches. And why that? It was because my mum's nickname for me is Branch or Branch.
Yeah.
When you roll the R in the motherland language. I thought that maybe it could be a play on that, and Branches kind of sounded nice. So I think we were called that for a week. And then they're like, no, we should. We went on MySpace and found out there was a whole ton of bands called Branches. So I was like, oh, well, scrap that. I think Nathan wanted to call us Arrows. There was another metal band called Arrows. Scrap that. And then he called me one day when I was driving home from work, and he said, how about Tape Off? Like those old boom boxes that you have from the 80s where you'd have a switch. If it had a CD player or if it didn't have a CD player, it'd usually have like radio in the top position. And then in the down position, it would say tape/off. Depending on the brand it was, some had off/tape or some just had radio off, tape.
So that was when you were taping from either a CD or the radio?
It was just a way of just turning off a boombox.
Oh, right. Yeah, the off position doubled as the tape position. Yeah. Right, yes.
Yeah.
Ah, of course. I never put that together.
What did you always think tape off meant?
I had no idea.
Really?
I thought it might have been like a face off reference, but tape because it's a band.
Awesome.
I want to take his tape off.
I've got to use that audio for our next record, Scott. No, I don't get a lot of questions about what it means, but I don't know. I've just assumed that people kind of got it. But then again, it is a little bit, it's a bit angular. If you were a kid in the 80s, that grew up in the 80s, those boom boxes, you kind of got it. But I'm sure kids these days, like 18, 20-year-olds, have never seen a boombox like that probably, so they probably wouldn't get it. And it was a bit unfortunate because at the time, remember when we were going through phases of types of band names. Like, in the early 2000s, we had a lot of bands. And then in the late 2000s, we started to go through bands with animals in them.
Yep, the deer and the wolf bands.
Yep. And then I felt like when we started coming on the scene in the early 2010s, there was tape bands, and we were one of those. Because remember, there was memory tapes and there was lunch tapes.
Lunch tapes, yeah. Rave tapes.
Rave tapes are out now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we're still in the era of the plurals band name.
Oh, we're totally in plural land.
Yeah, without the. Yeah, I always want to make a band and call it plurals.
And what's stopping you?
I could still do it, I guess. Yeah. So, Branko, you're like on top of a lot of things now. Are there any unfulfilled ambitions you still have?
I still haven't played at a big festival yet.
Really?
Very close to it. Tape Off almost played at the end of the... Not the End of the Line Festival. God, what was the name of that festival? That ill-fated festival that didn't actually happen. It was a local festival. It was going to be out towards Boona. This is in 2010. It was going to be like our third show. Michael Kerr was booking it. God. Oh, The Lost Weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The Lost Weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was going to be out at Ivory Rocks Conference Centre out there towards Boona way. And it was going to have Dinosaur Jr., The Drones, Brian Jonestown Massacre, Deerhoof.
Yeah, I remember the poster. I had the poster up in my bedroom for a long time, and then The Lost Weekend got lost. What happened to it?
It thoroughly got lost. So it wasn't selling as many tickets as it needed to at first. So it hastily got moved from the Ivory Rocks Centre out past Ipswich to the River Stage. And that happened, I want to say, a month or a month and a half before the actual event. Lawrence English was booking one of the side stages. And Do the Robot were going to be playing. Oh, I can't remember who else. But Lawrence English had heard about us and offered us a spot on the festival. And we were like, hell yeah, that'd be amazing. Our third show at a festival. That'd be rad. Super looking forward to it. And then 3 days out from the festival, news dropped that the whole festival had been canned. The plug had been pulled. It just wasn't selling tickets. Yeah, I don't know. People just weren't biting for it. So, Michael Kerr, who was the organiser of it, that had organised the Sounds of Spring festivals before that, I think he just turned off his phone and just escaped.
Damn.
For a little while. There's an article on it.
Wow.
I think that he did with the music about it many years later. But we missed out on our first festival appearance. So, yeah, Tape Off has never played a festival. So I'm looking forward to finally playing a festival.
I reckon Total Pace would be a festival band. I can see it like Laneway or something like that.
That could probably be it.
Yeah.
Gold Stars played the End of the Line Festival.
Oh, yeah?
Last year. But yeah, it'd be nice to see Tape Off on a festival bill somewhere.
Any other like personal career or music goals?
Would love to work with Gareth Lydiard on some music.
That's doable. He produces bands.
Yeah. I think that's a goal at the moment.
A Gareth Lydiard produced Tape Off album would be amazing.
You think? It ought to be. I think it'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, what he has done with the ModCon record is amazing. I mean, the Drones records and the Tropical Fuckstorm records are all pretty amazing as well. I see Seaweed. I mean, I know a lot of that has to do with Burke Reed. Like, Burke Reed did a lot of work on that record, but I know Gareth was very hands-on with it. It's one of those records where when I first heard it, I knew that someday in the future there would be like a Great Australian Albums documentary about that record. You know, I think it's just that good. It needs to be in the history books as one of the best. So yeah, I would love to work with him.
Do you live more in the present, do you think, rather than having big picture goals like that?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's kind of like, I remember one of my bosses that I had at the newspaper, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Jeez, I don't know, man. I always thought that was a trick question. Yeah, I don't plan that far ahead. I'm definitely more in the present, more in the now.
Thanks for being in the now here with me, Branko.
Scott, thank you very much for having me.
So, Branko, what's this song you're going to play for us?
History, which is, I think, one of the first songs that I actually thought is a tape-off song. This is going to be a song in whatever this band is going to become, and it appears on Unreal Unravel, and I hope I remember the lyrics, because I've never played it like this, not in front of anybody anyway. All right. I've got some history. You've got some history. We've got some history. There's some history. Good times runs through my memory bank. The places running on a full gas tank. Your house, many people I've hung out with. Lounge room, sat down, watched some boring shit. I've got some history, and you've got some history. We've got some history. There's some history. We got history together. We got history together. We got history together. That's the truncated version of that, what I can actually remember of that song.
Awesome. Thank you, Branko.
Thank you.
If you want to hear Branko talk some more about music, tune into the radio show that he co-hosts with Cam Smith, Unnecessary Knowledge. It's on 7 a.m. every Tuesday morning on 4ZZZ 102.1 FM. You can check out his bands. The ones currently going are Gold Stars, Total Pace and Tape Off. And Branko's early band Via Fuse still have 3 songs up on their Triple J Unearthed page, uploaded 12 years ago, if you want to check those out. Notes and corrections for this episode. Paul Dempsey. Does Paul Dempsey play in non-standard tunings? How does he get that sound? Well, according to an interview in Australian Guitar Magazine, Volume 22, Paul claims that he only plays guitar in standard tuning, but he can get unusual fingerings due to his very long fingers, which stretch across up to 5 frets. Now, this interview was from around the turn of the millennium, though, so it's possible he has since moved into non-standard tunings. So I don't know. I Heart Hiroshima played their first gig in January 2006, so they would definitely have been around when Branko was a young buck on the scene. And the article dissecting the non-starter festival that was The Lost Weekend was written by Andrew McMillan and published on the website Mess and Noise in March 2012. An excerpt of the story, titled The Lost Weekend, How a Festival Featuring the Drones and Dinosaur Jr. Went Down, is available on Andrew's website, but the link to the full article, unfortunately, is dead. Thank you for listening to Gimme Empathy. If this is the first one you're listening to, hi friends of Brankos. This is the podcast. There are many more like it with other interesting people, mostly from the Brisbane music scene. Over 40 episodes, in fact. Check some of them out wherever you get podcasts. Until next time, stay stay barefoot. Don't wear shoes. Until next time.